Madam Speaker, as a member of this House, I would like to explicitly indicate my concerns about any moves to be more transparent on our reserves. Yes, Honourable Member Hazel Phua asked for the total reserves data from an economic fiscal prudence angle. So what is the amount and how it should be used? It is understandable that people want to know. But foreign actors, currency speculators, and anyone who does not wish us well is also interested to know. And I mentioned people may join the bandwagon. So there are trade-offs. So the government has to weigh in balance. The balance struck is that the government does not disclose a lot, but disclosed a lot already, but not all. And I'm glad it is done delicately and so delicately by a responsible government. It would be prudent that we do not make unnecessary moves to reveal our total reserves, though sincere in its intent for more information, that it can unwittingly lead to significant negative economic outcomes, given our domestic context. The results of decades of sound monetary and fiscal policies are evident in the resilience of our economy, which has weathered multiple storms over the decades. So once again, I would like to explicitly state and indicate my concerns about any moves to be more transparent on our reserves.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm wondering if I could obtain a clarification from the member on what he feels that the revelation of reserves would necessarily be destabilizing. And I'll just point out a few reasons why I disagree. And the first is that revealing a target as well as reserves certainly could encourage destabilizing speculation, but it could also encourage stabilizing speculation. If we were off our fundamentally determined exchange rates, we could encourage market participants to actually engage in speculative activity that will get us back on to our fundamental exchange rate. And this, in fact, was a point that was routinely argued by the inventor of the band basket crawl system, John Williamson, for which we, the MAS at least, subscribes to, the BBC system. The second point I would like to point out is that actually, while it is convenient to argue that we have a distinct system in terms of exchange rate policy, by purchasing power parity, all exchange rate policy is in fact monetary policy. So even though it is the case that we target explicitly the exchange rate, it will have implications for inflation. And hence, when other countries, as the member has cited, such as Norway, reveal that they have a certain amount of reserves and they are subscribers to an inflation targeting regime, it is not in fact distinct from our own exchange rate targeting regime.
I just want to share with you, I started off working in the MAS back in 98, 99. The impact of the currency attacks can never be stabilizing. It has ramifications on the economy, it has ramifications on jobs, but back in the Asian financial crisis, the impact on the currencies that were specifically attacked, like Thailand, and even to some extent other countries in ASEAN region, was very significant, to the point that the currencies depreciated so much and that it led to the ramifications and cascading effects on the economy. What I saw in the Asian financial crisis, which is a perfect example of a speculative attack, led to economic ramifications that are not destabilizing at all. And that's from my own lived experience in 1998, 1999. Not theory. So the theoretical element that you shared from a theory perspective, that there can be a destabilizing impact of currency adjustments, can be stabilizing, maybe in theory does not make sense as well, unless you're talking about misalignments in the long run that eventually corrects itself.
If I may clarify, I should point out that I am in fact old enough to have also lived through the Asian financial crisis, and I'm aware of the conditions surrounding it. So this is not just in theory, it was also my lived experience.
Madam Speaker, to answer the question about the difference between Norway's monetary policy and Singapore's monetary policy, they're very distinct. I mentioned in my speech about the different economic context of Norway, where it's a petrol-driven economy, and where Singapore is a very trade-driven economy. And the reliance of using exchange rate as a controllable intermediate target in the Singapore economy is very distinct from Norway, which uses a policy rate, interest rate or deposit rates in its central bank. So the instrument being used, I think the important issue here when we're talking about reserves, in this situation for Singapore, when Singapore uses exchange rate as its policy tool, there is a direct intervention in the markets using currency spot to have a direct impact on the Sing dollar. And that is very specific because we target the exchange rate. If you look at Norway, Norway uses policy rates and its exchange rate is freely floated. So for Singapore's case, the very fact that we target an intermediate target of an exchange rate has some impact in terms of our ability to directly intervene in the markets and thus run down on our reserves from MAS reserves. So there is a very direct impact from a policy perspective and thus ramifications on our ability to have a direct rundown on reserves. Whereas for Norway's case, the policy target is totally different. It's using policy rates or interest rates.
Okay, Mr. Saktiandi, thank you for clarifying. I think we can move on. Mr. Alex Yam.